Hey everyone, Riaz here with 3D Crystal and Cockpit 3D. So with the busy season approaching, I thought it would be a good time to release a new video on Cockpit 3D version 2.5. It's got a lot of additional features to it, and also kind of top line how to use this software. So those who have signed up recently and need a bit of a helping hand will be able to watch this tutorial with one of our newer versions of the software. And of course, for those of you that have been using this for some time, will hopefully also benefit with the refresher and with some of the new features that I'll be pointing out. I'm going to attempt to keep this video under 30 minutes, maybe even around 20 minutes, and hopefully I'll be able to zoom through some of the key features here. Some will be simple, some will be new to some of you, but at the end of the day, hopefully it benefits the majority of viewers. So first thing I want to mention is that when you receive your 3D converted file, you can open it up here in Cockpit 3D by either double clicking the file that you've received from us, or just clicking on this icon here and then selecting the file and opening it into the software. The other thing I've been asked is how can I open up two different scene files that I've received. Maybe you sent in a conversion of one photo and a separate conversion of another photo. You want to bring them together into one file. You can click on the merge scene here, and if you do that, it will allow you to open another scene and bring it into this exact same screen, and it'll add another layer over here for that. If we go through the tools over here, you have some simple tools such as this one here is to select the actual object or layer. In this case, you can see by these blue markings here that this layer has already been selected. This will allow you to move it. So if you move your white cursor here and have both the vertical and the horizontal arrows highlighted in yellow, you can actually left click and move this in any direction. If, however, you want to move it just up and down, you don't want to mess around with the x-axis left and right, then ensure that only what was the green arrow turns to yellow, and now it's locked. When you move your mouse, it won't allow you to move in the other direction. Similarly, you can do the same for this direction here, and it won't let me go up and down. If I want to recenter, I can actually just click on this button here, and it will automatically recenter. This here will allow me to rotate. Again, I have different axes to do that in, represented by 3 different colors, blue, red, and green, and whichever one is yellow, it'll move in that direction. I can always step back by clicking on this arrow here. If I want to resize the image, I can click on here, and it'll do a uniform. Even the label of it is called the Uniform Scale tool, and it'll allow me to uniformly maintain the scale and change the size of what I'm looking at. This here is the non-uniform scale. So this one here is really good for when you're doing it on the side view. If ever you wanted to stretch it or even compress it, many times you'll have like the nose of the dog is too far out and it's touching the crystal, so you need to compress that a bit. You can always do that again by highlighting the applicable direction. In this case, it would be the blue arrows, and there we go. And I can do what I need to do, right? And I can step back, go back to my front view. You'll notice I used this over here. This allows me to very quickly snap to different directions, so I can see things very, very quickly and accurately. I want to see the exact left side. I just click on left, and I can do that. You might have also seen me use this function here. If I click on this, it allows me to move from 4-port view to single-port view. If I like looking at the entire screen, I can just maximize it. This here, if I left-click in front, if I left-click and hold it down and then move my mouse, it allows me to zoom in and zoom out of the view. I can also rotate my view by clicking on this, and I can move the view as well. All right, so this function here is called an align tool. If I wanted to align, let's say, for example, I want to add text here, and I wanted my text to be exactly 5 millimeters above this layer here. That's what this tool will allow me to do. I can actually select my primary layer, select the layer that I want to keep relative to the primary layer, call it 10 millimeters below or above, or to the left, to the right, or to the back, to the front, and I could do that for accurate positioning. Now, there's a separate tutorial on that, so I'm not going to really get in depth on that, but if you want to watch that, you can definitely look that tutorial up on our YouTube channel. And speaking of the YouTube channel, you can access it by clicking on this icon here. Be sure to like the videos, subscribe, and turn notifications on, because whenever I do post a new video, you'll be one of the first to know. All right, now these here will allow you to actually cut the model. So if you want to cut parts of the model out, you can do so with these icons here. You'll notice that currently they are not active because we're looking at the geometry file, right? So the geometry file with all the polygons won't allow me to easily just edit it. It needs to be a point cloud. If I convert this to a point cloud, I can then start trimming. So let me just click on Go. And now, let's say, for example, I wanted to cut, I don't know, let's just say we didn't want his legs in it. So I could trim around like that. And anything that's red, I can just click on this here. It says hide selected points, and I can hide them. If I wanted to unhide them, I'd select this here. So let's say I had hid them, and then I wanted to bring them back. I could click on this here. And if I want to invert, I can invert as well. So it'll select the opposite. And there we go. It's important to note that if you want to save this, you should now actually add it as a layer. So add point cloud preview to scene. Because when I go back to remember, I never actually cut the polygons out. So now I've got two layers here. I've got my layer that is the polygons, the actual scene file, and then I've got a layer which is my point cloud. So I'll show you that. And that's over there, right? So now I could position this however I wanted, and then I can click on Go. And you'll notice that I also created this point cloud with the text, so the text is a part of it as well, right? So if I didn't want the text to be a part of it, then I could create the point cloud without the text first, and then add the text later. Again, rarely would you ever have to actually use this function, but when you do, it's a nice to have. Okay, so I'm just going to delete this layer because I don't need it, and I'm going to recenter this here so I can continue with the tutorial. I think we've talked about everything along the left side. Oh yeah, this one here. So this is if you wanted to crop a 2D image. So let's say that you're working with just a standard flat JPEG. We have offered most users the opportunity to utilize our software for creating 2D point clouds. And so therefore, if you have that license, then you will be able to click on this icon here to open up a JPEG or 2D file. And then you can just crop it with that function there. Right now it's not active because I don't have a 2D file open. But I can, remove whatever I don't want using just a kind of a square cropping tool. And it will allow me to do that with the 2Ds. All right, let's go across the top. This here, if I click this, will refresh the page. If I click this, it opens up scene files. If I click this, it saves the scene. This does not save the point cloud for your laser. This saves the scene. So let's assume that I'm working on a more complicated project that has a lot of different layers. Maybe it's got a logo, another logo, it's got text, maybe two different merged scene files. I'm just working on something that's conceptual and I want to show it to the customer, but I got to go for the day and I won't be able to do it until tomorrow. So in that case, you want to save the scene. So if anything happens, you're able to open up that scene and continue working on your project. This here is a step back. This is a step forward. This again is for inscription. You can, when you're on inscription, which is here, I've already got a layer, you can select your font size here. You can adjust your line spacing. So for example, if I had two lines and I wanted to increase the space between them, I could do that too. And that's pretty much what you need to know for inscription. We talked about this as being the icon that you click on if you want to import a 2D JPEG file. This here is to delete layer. So let's say I want to delete the highlighted layer. In this case, it's my inscription. I can delete it. This here is for brightness and contrast. So I can increase the brightness and contrast of what I see here. Now, of course, if you're creating point clouds, they're all going to be grayscale anyway. So what you want to do is you actually want to first hop over to this icon here, click it, and it'll convert it to grayscale. So now you can see everything as the laser sees it. Use your brightness contrast tool and you can brighten and you can play around with the contrast. So that's there because I do know that there are users that liked that function in the earlier versions of the software. We had then removed it, and then I've added it back really because it was requested by many users who use that function. Personally, I like to use Photoshop, so I have Photoshop installed on this computer. If I click on this icon, it will launch the image in Photoshop, and then I can create I can do my optimization. Optimization is a separate tutorial altogether, but you know what? Let me just take you through it here right now as well, I think it's an important piece, so I'll just go through it. So let's go image mode grayscale. That's the first thing you want to do. I'm going to try and zip through this, but just you can always play it back if you need to. So after you convert it to grayscale, you want to use your curves here and just drag down the middle and look at the brightest person and just make sure that they're not getting too bright. Okay, so I'm just going to zoom in so I can see this clearly. And that's about all I'd want to do. If I go any brighter, I'm going to start losing details of her lips or of her nose or what have you. And then what you want to do is you want to use your brush tool on a color dodge at maybe about 15 or 20%. Make sure your top layer is white and make sure you have the correct layer here selected. Now you'll notice that the color palette turned to black on the top, so just make sure that it's white. And then what you can do is you can actually brush the darker person and just make sure that they become a little brighter too. If you have dark clothes, you can either use your dodge tool if you want to be quick about it. If it's very, very dark, like almost black, I would almost suggest that you do it with the magnetic lasso and use your layer to brighten it. I'll show you how to do that, and keep your feather at 5 so it's not obvious that you've done it. But basically you want to trace around whatever is dark and then go to your curves and just brighten it. Okay, and then you want to merge all your layers together. So just right click, click on merge, and then save it. Control S, file, save. You can see the shortcut there is Control S. Whoops. Control S, it's saved. And that's optimization. It's really, really important. Okay, a lot of people neglect to optimize. They're quick to just send files across to their laser without focusing on optimization. And this really is more than 50% of the quality on your crystal. So then what you're going to do is you're going to come back here, click on refresh, and now you've got your optimized file. This one here is if, for example, you need to place this image at a precise spot within the crystal. So let's say, for example, I needed this image to be exactly 2 centimeters below the top surface. Okay. There is a separate tutorial on this, but I'll just do this one quickly too. So let's just align. Let's say it's the top of this. So I want to align the Y top edge, so the top edge of this, to be 20 millimeters, 2 centimeters, below the template's top edge. So align the top edge, which would be this edge here, to be below the template's top edge. So if I do this now, this here should be exactly 2 centimeters below this. And it probably is because the size of this crystal is just 5 centimeters. We're used to kind of seeing 50, 80, 50s, so let's just do that again with the 50, 80, 50. And it has memorized my last instruction, and there you go. So you can see that you're exactly, if each one of these boxes represents 1 centimeter, you are 2 centimeters below the top edge. So where would you want to use this function is usually if, you are also going to be surface etching or sandblasting, and you know that you need to leave certain space on the crystal for taking it to a sandblaster, then you would position the model accordingly. All right. this one here is, say for example, I'm all the way zoomed out and I just want to bring it back. I can click on that and it'll bring it back. This here is for templates. So, we've got a whole bunch of preset templates here. You can also set your own. So let's say that I know some people don't have a straight 60, 90, 90. They might have a 60, 95 or 60, 100, 60. So you can just reset that, save as, and then save it as your own template. Now you'll be able to just click it whenever you want to use it without having to type it in every time. Margins are just for safety, right? So let's say, for example, here. Let me just make my bevel 0. So this space from the actual edge of the crystal to the safety margin, because I don't want my laser to, I don't want my image to go beyond that safety margin, because I don't want my laser to then come close to the surface. Otherwise, it might crack the crystal. So we create the safety margin. Now, people do ask, well, then what's the point of the bevel? The point of the bevel is just for aesthetics. So if you wanted to send a digital preview to your customer, then you could set your bevel to be the same as what your margin is, so 3 in this case. And it's added bevels, right? So it looks a little better, especially when you want to snap a shot of this and send it to your customer. Offsets. So offsets are, for example, if your laser has this issue of always burning the image off-center. So let's say that you put your crystal at the origin position of your laser, but it always burns the image 10 millimeters too high, or 10 millimeters too much to the left, or 10 millimeters too high. Then what you could do is, instead of moving that crystal, I know some people, what they do is they then create another mark on their table for where they need to position that crystal. Or if the image is not centered, they'll actually put a paper underneath their crystal to increase the height of it so that the image burns centered. You don't have to do that. As long as you identify how much you are off, then you can actually set that offset here in the software, and the DXF, CAD, CBF, HDBRD file that you save will remember that. And so when you load this in your laser, it will actually burn it to the correct position. Isn't that cool? I mean, this is the kind of stuff I love about this software, is that we just keep, every time we come up with a certain challenge, we ensure that we address it and answer it by the way of software, so that it is easy. Because imagine, you might know that you have to position something at a certain place, but your staff might not, or your new staff might then have another step in the learning curve that you want to kind of remove and keep it as simple as possible. So hopefully this here will address that for whoever sees that problem. All right, I think we've talked well about the, oh yeah, there's one other thing I should mention here is that, the Prestiges and Hearts even, everybody kind of has a different style. Let me just, here, Prestige. Okay, so although this looks like a Prestige that you might have, or that others might have, everybody's is different in some way. Maybe their angle is different over here. Maybe their slope on the Z is different. Maybe their bevel is different. But it's very difficult, even when you're ordering from your same supplier. When you order your next batch, it will rarely be identical to your first batch, okay? Because there's different workers that work on it. So what we can do for you is that if you want to have an accurate template, you can send us your crystal, and we can actually add your template to the software for you. We can give you a copy of that template that you can add to the software. So if you want to do that, just reach out to us. We'll let you know what the costs are associated to that. We can actually customize that for you. The other thing is that what we can do is we can also supply you with raw materials. So if you have raw material requirements or needs, we can supply you both locally out of North America as well as directly from the factory in China. So that way, whatever templates we do come out with for this software, you'll always have it as well. And the quality is awesome, and the pricing is competitive. The boxes are awesome too. So just a little plug there if you need. All right, let's go to the settings. So on the settings, the secret formula, right? 0707852. I've got a separate, I think, 60-second B-roll on that, but 0707852. So XY should be 07, Z should be 07, and then your layers should be 8, 5, and 2. And as long as you do that, you'll be able to achieve HD results. Now, if your image is cracking, then what you should really do is reduce your power on your laser. But if that doesn't help, then, you know, in that scenario, you really have no choice but to start off by increasing the space on your Z axis from 0.07 maybe to 0.08, 0.09, 0.10. And as you do that, it will spread the points between layers a little more on the Z axis. And when you do that, it will avoid or reduce the probability of cracking taking place or of those points melting together. So you can do that. Of course, the reason why you wouldn't want to do that is because it might, well, it will reduce the resolution on the side view. So these are really optimal settings, but again, not really noticeable to the end consumer. If you were to double this from 0.07 to 0.14 on Z, it should be okay. If that doesn't work for you, then you can actually start doing it on XY. So if you do it on XY, then you're starting to reduce the resolution on the front view. So this is something that I'm not a fan of, but if you have to go to 08, 09, or 0.10, then you would, in doing so, it would reduce your resolution. At the same time, it'll reduce the probability for cracking. Now, I should mention the power of Cockpit 3D is the algorithm, right? So it's the ability to be able to do HD point clouds with most lasers and without experiencing, you know, your crystal cracking. So, so my recommendation is definitely try and keep the settings the same. But if you can't, then you can increase these points. Of course, it begs the question, well, then why don't I decrease it? Why don't I go to 0.05? Because that'll make it even higher resolution, right? It'll look even better. Well, you can. You can definitely experiment with that. You can do it. Of course, there's a point of elasticity, right? There's always that point where you kind of have to decide where am I getting the most value, you know, for my settings. So if you go to 0.05, yes, it'll increase resolution. It'll also increase the probability of cracking. So you might come across certain crystals with a lot of white that will crack. And so you're going to have to keep that in mind. So that's another variable to think about, which you really don't want to. So you want to try and have settings where you don't really have to worry about how much white is in the image. The other thing is as you decrease this, it increases the number of points. And as it increases the number of points, it also increases the burn time too. So 0707852. Toning, you can range anywhere from 1.8 to 2.2. It's pretty much just applying a curve of contrast to the image. So if you generate a point cloud with 1.8, then generate a point cloud with 2, and then a point cloud of 2.2, and compare the brightness, you'll see that it gets brighter with the lower number here, and it gets a little more, we'll call it not darker, but there's more contrast applied to it as the number gets higher. So, you know, just figure out which one you like. If you're not sure, just keep it at 2.0, right? Again, not really noticeable to the consumer, but we give you the option to be able to adjust and tweak and create that level of perfection that you want to do. Trim point cloud to templates. So, you know, if you increase the size of this here, and let's say, for example, we just wanted to have the two of them and their faces, but not necessarily his legs or anything like that, then we could just put them there, click on go, and it will create the point cloud, and it will trim it along the edge over here. And there you go. You can see that it's a perfect cut. Now, the issue here is that it's still coming right up against the edge of the glass, and you really don't want that to happen. So what I recommend, again, this is a new feature, a really, really cool feature, is turn on your light maps. And when you do that, it will create a natural fade along the edge. Let me just let that, view enable light map, there we go. Okay, and it's created this natural fade. You see that? Right here is a perfect example along there. And so it will look much more beautiful. The other thing that you can adjust here on that fade is your blur radius and your fall off exponent. So blur radius, think of it as kind of almost the number of millimeters away from the edge. And fall off exponent is how quickly do you want it to fade to black. So if I make this 0, it will take its time until it fades to the black right against the edge. So watch this here. You should see a difference. We'll just let that calculate. And there you go. So it's less obvious than before. All right, trim point cloud template we talked about. Layer shift and Z jitter. Keep layer shift off, keep Z jitter on. These both were really created to remove those lines. You know, sometimes you see circles along the forehead working its way to the center. So this disguises that. It used to be called layer shift. Now we've added Z jitter. I like Z jitter better. I like the final effect of it better. So therefore I keep it on. You should keep it on too. If you want to compare them both, you can definitely do that. Stabilizing points. You know, what's the real center of this image? Let me just click on this and see. So it might suggest that is the, let's assume that we didn't have any of this stuff here, okay? So it might assume that this here is the center, yet really we don't, because of the way that this is cut, we might position it off-centered because we just want to see what looks, even though mathematically there's a center point, what looks appealing to the visual eye might be placing the father right in the center and then the daughter off to the left. So, you know, it's a matter of taste. And what happens is that when you save your point cloud and you load it in your laser will look at the it won't look at what the visual center is. It'll look at true center. So it'll take a look at this template. It'll treat it like a rectangle. It'll measure it along the Y, right along the edge there, along the X. Imagine drawing a rectangle touching each of the furthest points. And it sees it like a rectangle. So again, it's not paying attention to the kind of visual effect. And therefore, when it centers this, it's centering it according to what it sees as a rectangle. So this is always going to happen. Therefore, you're going to find that your image will never really burn perfectly in the prestige shaped crystal. So what we have is stabilizing points. When you turn this on, it memorizes the spot that you have placed it at. So as long as you have accurately entered the dimensions of your crystal, and as long as you're using an accurate template, then it will burn at that exact same spot in the crystal. Okay, so that's the beauty of the stabilizers over there. Edit geometry default. So this is generally projection with, again, 852. Don't worry about fill solid. That's for 360 projects. And it's turned off anyway. And when you click on go for projection, it will create a point cloud that is paying attention to the detailing of every aspect of that photo. So even if there's a strand of hair or fur hanging out, it will pay attention to that and create points for it. We do have another option here. X-ray is again for 360, separate tutorial. I'm going to skip over that. Portrait. So portrait, again, same settings, 852. But why would you use portrait over projection? The reason you'd use portrait over projection is actually I might be able to show you the difference with this exact file. Yeah, I will. So you see how he's carrying a cone of ice cream here, right? So let me just to save time on the calculation, I'm just going to take this back to like a small size here. I'll turn my light maps off. And I'll just click on, let me just make sure I've got my projection on, 852, save, okay, go. Okay, now you'll notice here that it's created a shadow on his shirt. You see that? And also on her. Less noticeable because her hand is closer to her body, but more noticeable on him over there. So what you can do is you can disguise this and make it less obvious by putting on portrait. If you turn on portrait, what it will do is it will fill up this space along the side and the top with points to make it less distracting and less noticeable. You see that? It's created points along there. Now, of course, the disadvantage of this is that even on, for example, when you've got a dog with fur, it will also create or fill up the space between the fur. And so it reduces that kind of level of detailing. So you want to use projection all the time, except for situations where it's very obvious that someone might be carrying a ball and that ball is creating this big hole on the chest. And in that case, you'd use portrait. Just want to point out one other thing is that you saw that there was a value here called sample radius. If you increase this, it will increase the amount of points it uses to fill that side area. All right. Edit vector defaults is for vector logos. That's a separate tutorial. We'll skip over that. Import scene settings. A lot of users will message asking, how come I've saved my settings, yet every time I open up a scene file, my settings have changed? So the reason is because it will, by default, import the settings that were on the artist's computer who had worked on your file if you have this checked on. So as long as you check this off, you'll be able to save your settings, and it'll save the last settings that you had when you created a CAD file and had closed the software. It will remember it, and it will keep that for the future. The optimize on save, so you just want to keep this set to 2.0, and what this really does is there are situations where some lasers are a bit archaic and they don't burn very fast because they don't know how to sort points very well. So our software will sort the points for the laser so that that laser will be able to burn that point cloud faster. So just keep this on all the time. If you don't know what kind of laser you have, or if it's sorting points efficiently, you can just keep that on. All right, to save your DXF, your CAD, you can click on that there. This here is related to social broadcast, separate tutorial. We talked about YouTube. Again, subscribe, like, share, turn notifications on. And this here is to take a screenshot. If I just want to save what I have on my screen, I can do so I can email it to a customer. This icon here is cool. It will enable you to create a PDF where you can show all 4 different viewports on that PDF. You can create a PO number, you can create a quote, and you can send that professionally with your logo on it to the customer so that they then have, you know, almost like a preview of what it is that you're pitching to them, generally in corporate scenarios, and you can keep that on file for future when they want to reorder more. So hopefully, I don't know if I kept within my 30 minutes or not, but hopefully that gives you a very, very good overview. I hope that that's 30 minutes of time well spent in watching this tutorial, and I wish you all the very best during this upcoming busy season.